Hello, everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Martin Loffers. I'm the Chief Trend Watcher of Supply Chain Media. You might also know me as the Chief of Supply Chain Movement, European Quarterly, and also LinkedIn group and a website and email newsletter. We have a great live webinar coming up. We're going to talk about end-to-end transport management. And we have a great panel here to explain about this topic. So on the left, you see me, Martin Loffers, and next to me, I have three experts about this matter. First, Caroline Hunt from Alpega TMS. Caroline, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Martin.
And next, we have two Michaels, but first we have Mike Buckle, also from Alpega. Mike, welcome.
Hello together.
And last but not least, we have Michael Bulow from ACCO, a manufacturing company. We'll be introducing later. So Michael, welcome.
Yeah, hello. Welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Yes. So first to explain, this webinar will be recorded. This recording will be made available within 48 hours. And also the presentation will be made available as PDF later on. So everybody, the whole audience is on mute, but you have an opportunity to ask questions. There are two ways, either by chat. So the first question would be, do we get the slides? And if someone else can say, yes, you get the slides. So if you have questions for the audience, please use the questions function. You see the question mark on the right-hand side. And people can also vote on the questions. So basically, I can track down what are the most popular questions. If you have questions about what's being discussed and it's in line of this discussion, I will, include this question right away. So you can have an interaction with the experts. And next, at the end, we have also a Q&A for questions. And if you still want to talk more after the hour, so at 5 o'clock CET, we have 30 minutes also when you go into the lounge and can talk to the experts directly. Then you get in a kind of Zoom meeting. So we don't have the cameras off, but we are live. You can enlarge your slides. You see the four small arrows on the upper right of the screen. So you can enlarge your slides to look closer to the slides to read it. So that's the logistical part of this webinar. Let's start with the topic itself. But first, Caroline, can you explain Alpega TMS, who you are?
I would be very happy to. So yes, thanks very much for hosting here, Martin. On the screen, you'll see the vision of Alpega as a whole. And I think our vision for supply chain collaboration really carries with it the power to drive truly end-to-end transportation management. And that's done through bringing shippers, and by shippers I mean manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers, closer to their suppliers and their carriers. And by creating a holistic view of the supply chain, we get real collaboration. We know with global pandemics and major shifts in demand, we see our solution as vital in optimizing how goods are transported in order to make sure to meet customer demands while minimizing emissions and at the same time ensuring resilience and adaptation to changing market conditions. So our customers can really position themselves for success using our solutions by understanding the many areas where logistics can make an impact in the bigger business goals.
Great. And could you explain something about what do you offer as Alpega TMS?
Yeah, of course. So practically speaking, we are a technology company. So we offer software solutions and manufacturers, retailers of all sizes and levels of supply chain complexity are turning to digital solutions like ours, tackle their logistics processes efficiencies, and to gain some much needed visibility. So Alpega TMS allows all the parties involved in the process of shipping goods to have the latest status and customizable alerts about the shipments that are being executed. So our users can focus on what really matters and automate the rest. Beyond that, we also connect Alpega TMS with our freight exchanges and enable direct access to freight capacities via our Alpega hub. So those two pieces of the Alpega group really fit nicely together.
And it's all cloud-based.
Correct.
Yes, so that's important to connect to all other parties and
Absolutely.
to roll out. We will discuss it later. Maybe some facts and figures to wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So here are some basic facts and figures about Alpega. The main message here, I'm not going to go through each one in detail, but the main message here is that we have the scale and the experience to help companies like AGCO, for example, who is our featured guest today, to roll out a truly end-to-end TMS. And I think Mike is going to talk in a minute more about what we mean by an end-to-end TMS.
Okay, all right. Mike, yeah, maybe up to you. Can you explain, well, yeah, we'll talk about end-to-end transport management, but can you explain what it is?
Of course, many thanks. At first, let me frame it a little bit more high level even. So when we are talking about transportation, of course, we are talking about all different kinds of material flows, meaning inbound, outbound, but also intercompany transports. And when we are talking about TMS, we also include all kinds of transport modes, meaning road, air, ocean, and parcel. Why are we doing that? Because we are convinced that, of course, the bigger you take the network, the bigger you can create saves. So that's a little bit the high-level framing. And now coming to our Alpega end-to-end TMS cycle. So typically we are starting off the process with a network design. So that's kind of a strategic part. Here you really answer questions like, where should my hub be located, for instance? So that's an exercise you're doing typically on an annual basis, so not very frequent. You're pulling different scenarios, compare them, and then decide how should your strategic transportation network look like. This is also the main outcome of this process step, which then leads very often into strategic sourcing questions. So you see that you need, for instance, additional lanes to be sourced on road. You need to do an air tender. Whatever you need there, the strategic sourcing supports you in order to digitize this sourcing process, to analyze the different offerings you get, and then, of course, finally, decide for which carrier you want to go. So select the best carrier, which then leads to the next step, because, of course, nominating the carrier is not the last stage. You then need to take that into consideration in the tactical optimization, which comes along with a more frequent replanning of your network. You have more accurate data. This is typically done on a weekly, monthly basis already. So it's still on demand, transport demand. And here you once more verify if your network is giving you the best options through the network. In this tactical optimization, you very often identify you have full trucks planned, but you need to change, for instance, the frequency of the full trucks in order to get them really utilized properly. You change from a LTN model into a milk run model, for instance. So that's the key decisions and aspects in the tactical optimization, which then lead, and that's the third stage of planning then, into the operational planning. So now we move into more execution world. That means you're not doing everything on demand, planned data. Here you now have the real transport order in the system, which is effectively outbound delivery out of the ERP, or is a PO you have to deliver. And in that stage, you once more verify, for instance, if your truck is really utilized with the as-is transports. And in that stage, you squeeze out even more out of your planned network and can save transport costs. At the end of such a process, in some cases, you can identify that you have transport demands where you do not have sourced lanes, for instance. That's then very often handled what we can see in a spot sourcing. So really going out to the carriers and ask them for specific load, a specific price. One use case I would say for spot sourcing, but we see customers using that functionality also quite often for benchmarking their contracted rates, or really go out to spot market also in air ocean tenders. So that's the spot sourcing. At the end of those two steps, we now really go into the shipment execution. Shipment execution starts, of course, with assigning the carrier, but it then goes down from really tracking the status from pickup down to proof of delivery. And that's, of course, also very often and more commonly linked into that real-time visibility network aspect. That means our TMS, of course, is linked directly with the carriers, but we are also utilizing RTB provider, we call them, like Shipio, P44, and ForeKites, in order to really gather real-time ETA information or localization information. Of course, that's giving you back nice information you can act on. Also in that area of shipment execution, we see, of course, it's not only around transport, it's also entering into the yard management topic. So how to best utilize your docks and the equipment at the docks, as well as avoiding peaks, for instance, on your yard is kind of a quite commonly used add-on we call smart dock booking, deeply integrated in the overall process. And then freight cost management, of course, taking all executed transports, regardless of the mode of transport, take them, calculate based on the freight rates, and then go into a claiming process. We see very commonly in Europe, especially, that self-billing is the process of choice because it's delivering the most accurate and lowest effort for your freight cost management at the end. And we close the loop, of course, by taking all the data we collect from planning down to real-time visibility into our operational dashboards, as well as into our performance analysis. Just a few KPIs typically used, of course, carrier performance, on time in full. Very often, of course, also freight cost analysis down to total landed costs are part of this performance analysis. So that's how we define end-to-end. So it's really about all transports, and it's starting from a strategic point and is going down to the deep execution, because at the end it has to be at the right time, at the right place.
An important thing, I know Alpega TMS quite well, that you have integrated both inbound and outbound, so those are not separate worlds anymore.
Definitely. So that's bearing quite a lot of transport synergies. Of course, you can consolidate partially, depending on the industry and of course on your specific network. Yes, that's correct. So we combine those two definitely. Yeah.
I got a question from the audience, and maybe you can relate to that in the next slide. Where do you see the starting point of a TMS, and where does it end in the customer's information chain? Maybe you can explain also the level of, the roadmap of TMS with that question.
Yep, sure. So what we see is the TMS topic very often is embedded in a wider supply chain digitization roadmap. And now knowing that, of course, transportation costs, but also transportation in regards of resilience and ensuring the resilience of your overall supply chain is essential. We see that the TMS itself is quite centered into that overall supply chain roadmaps. Now, looking a little bit deeper into the TMS roadmaps we see, we basically distinguished 3 maturity levels we identified. You can see as a starting point, very often we see requirements around execution, so starting collaboration, integrate the carriers, but also, especially on the inbound side, integrate the suppliers, as also is the case for ECHO. Michael will explain that a little bit more. Is essential in order to really create one platform for all participants in the transport chain. So that's, I would say, maturity level 1 integrated. The next level we see is then based on this visibility created that customers really go into advanced planning and optimization topics, which of course delivers then quite interesting and nice freight cost reduction options. That's the stage we call strategic. And last level we see, and by the way, ECHO is on the hop to that level currently, is the horizontal level. So that's the maturity level where you have basically done everything in-house in your supply chain you can do. Now, what we see, especially also in the light of limited freight capacities, but also infrastructure, road, as well as rail and so on is limited. We see customers are going more and more into discussions to really collaborate regarding transportation cross-company. So meaning really planning and executing, having this material on the same truck, even if they are competitors. So that's something we see will come into truth more and more. I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, it will turn from a competitive advantage into must-have even. So that's this aspect. And what comes along with that is also, and that's something Michael will elaborate much more on, is also the operating mode of TMS is changing. So the pre-TMS phase, typically transportation is outsourced to an LSP. You have 4 or 5 regional LSPs and no TMS in place, no transparency. So that's even the pre-TMS phase. In that execution, so integrated strategic maturity levels, we see in-house organizations with the TMS, managed service approaches or hybrid models. And what's next? That will be a quite interesting discussion, maybe in a follow-up webinar.
All right. I have a question, a practical question related to what you just mentioned. Do the use of Shipio and Project 44 also means that Alpega is not directly connecting to the carriers?
We are directly connected to the carriers. But not in the sense that we are gathering the telematics information from the carriers. So the big difference is, so Alpega has a 80K carrier network, so we have connections to 80,000 carriers, but it's web or EDI integrations for assigning for status information. But we are not connecting to their fleet boards, whatever telematics they're using. So that's what we do via Shipio P44 for kites.
I have some more questions, but I would suggest to go to Michael Bulow from ECHO and explain his case, but that will clarify a lot of the questions and maybe also have some more triggers for a discussion. So Michael Bulow, could you explain first a bit more about ECHO, and then we'll take it away from what you have done?
Yeah, sure, Martin. Happy to do that. So ECHO, I think some of you know ECHO already, is one of the biggest agricultural machinery manufacturer worldwide. And you see here our vision statement that we recently renewed. We put the farmer into the core of our activities and also basically put sustainability as a very high target. So our vision statement is sustainable high-tech solutions for farmers feeding the world. Pretty new and shared with you now. Our turnover in 2020 was around 9.1 billion. We have around 20,000 people on board. And in the middle, you see here that we are, our revenues are heavily based on the European Middle East region, where we generate almost 60% of the overall revenues, followed by the other regions. Our total freight spend is around 300 million worldwide on a global basis, and we operate our business within 54 plants globally.
All right. And maybe you can explain what kind of product lines you have, because you have different kind of brands, isn't it?
Yeah, we are pretty much grown with lots of acquisitions. So I think we just heard that collaborating among competition is something on the horizon. What we did, we already bought our competition in the past 20 years. So I think this is quite interesting. And we have here defined during this journey 5 core brands. You see here is Challenger, which is, let's say, known for, let's say, powerful machines in niche applications. We have Fendt, which is probably in Europe a very well-known technology world market leader for everyone here in that core majority. And we have the brand GSI, which is maybe not so known for everyone, but in that brand we get all the solutions for grain storage and poultry equipment on a global basis. And Massey Ferguson is a very famous brand worldwide, pretty much very much known to every country, I would say. And the Valtra brand is specifically focusing on customer needs, really to customizing the products towards the specific customer needs.
Yeah, and those ones look very impressive. Maybe you can talk about the challenges or the automotive world challenges. So, what can you relate to the challenges AGCO is facing in these times?
Yes, so the challenges that specifically AGCO faced, I already mentioned, is the brand variety. So we have been grown by acquisitions very heavily. You see here on the top right, on the top left of the slide, the different acquisitions that took place over the years. This actually extended our size of the company and also the network size that you see on the upper right side. So rapid network expansion towards 54 plants on a global basis. Another bullet is more than 6,000 direct material suppliers for the factories and more than 14,000 transport relations. I think this basically depicts a picture of a very complex supply chain, which we indeed became through the different acquisitions. On the other side, we have market volatility. What does it mean for us as a challenge? It basically is on the demand side that the farmers, which are basically at the end our customers, are faced with different prices on their markets. So they need to think about their investments into new machines, and they can only invest heavily if the prices on their markets are nice. And since these prices are pretty volatile, we have to be flexible in our production programs on the different factories worldwide. In another challenge, basically, and that is indeed come from the automotive world, is the thinking about commonalities of parts, what we already do with global platforms. So our engineers are looking towards engineering, let's say, product platforms in which we then leverage the commonalities of parts in order to get cost synergies. But this for supply chain then means that supply chains become more international because you need to supply then these parts into different factories on a global basis. So these are basically the challenges that we that was growing over the years, which we needed to tackle.
Considering all these acquisitions and this brand variety, can you explain what the supply chain journey looked like in the last years?
Yeah, looking back in time, I think we created here the strategy basically that we created as part of the global materials management transformation. And yeah, so what you need actually to tackle all these challenges is to get the people behind you and to really get one global motivation. And one global motivation, for example, is that every time we compare with our peers, we were seeing that the EBIT profit margin, for example, we were lagging behind our competitors. So this was a very strong message that there's a big potential Echo to basically get the synergies out of the acquisitions done. So we formulated a strategy, and in that strategy, you see here that we wanted to develop from a short-term focus performer into a global integrated long-term partner. So when our evolution basically started, our teams were very reactive, and our factories and sites worked independently from each other, as you can imagine. But nevertheless, we started first purchasing collaboration projects and ensured, let's say, fast resolutions for upcoming problems. During the integration phase that you see here that we went through in 2015 until 17, we went through a standardized global KPI assessment, which means we basically defined global targets, and as well as launched standardized global tools which enabled us then basically to achieve these targets on a global basis, which is here named with TMS, so Transportation Management System, which I will elaborate in a few minutes from now, plus also supplier network collaboration, which was basically the link to our supply base. And this enabled us to get into a competitive advantage phase that you see here on the right side of the slides, in which we became more proactive and actually set the basis for a shift into integrated demand planning. And we were also able to shift from regional control towers into global control towers.
That sounds interesting. Everybody wants control towers. Maybe you could explain how does Echo keeps improving over time? So what are you steering at?
Yeah, actually, as part of that journey, we defined an initiative which is Echo Smart Logistics that you see here. So as core of Echo Smart Logistics, as a result of Echo Smart Logistics, we created a performance cockpit, which is accessible, which is also basically a cloud-based solution, accessible internally for the quality materials and also purchasing teams on a global basis, and also externally for suppliers and logistics service providers. So in that cockpit, we are collecting KPI tracking data, reporting from different systems. We are using the cockpit to basically to manage our suppliers and develop them further. We have also integrated a risk management service provider, which is Risk Method. So they are providing us on a daily basis with operational relevant information when it comes to deviations in supply chain or disruptions. So in that tool, we have digitalized all the origin destination pairs that we have on a global basis. We are furthermore collecting non-conformities, obviously to escalate and to work out action plans also in that tool. And we, last but not least, using the tool for tracking and reporting savings. So all in one tool to basically have a good team really accessible on one data platform, which is needed to be effective.
But underneath there are different kind of systems. That's the main message. But also,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for example, KPI tracking, there's a lot of KPIs that are also coming from the transportation management system. Also non-conformities are also partly coming from the transportation management system. Yeah.
All right. Okay, but can you explain, so what were objectives in the last few years and what will be the new objectives?
Yeah, so when we look into our objectives, it was always that we digitalize our supply chain for the global material flows, and we follow let's say this also today. So we want to create more transparency in the material flow. We want to still keep our transportation cost reduced. So over the years, we have reduced them significantly. At this point in time, we try to remain on a very low level, obviously. So we are running already on a very optimized level. We are trying to increase the network performance. Mainly on-time delivery is the main KPI. And by this reliability increase, we will be able and still able to reduce further inventories.
Right. Let's go into the world of TMS. So when you explained on this journey that you, well, in the end, you implemented Alpega TMS. or maybe it's called I. So how did you start this whole journey?
Yeah. When you start that journey, what you will recognize, one of the biggest spends that you have is basically transportation spend. Yeah, this is a very, very big cost bucket. I mentioned already 300 million globally. So this is something where which you want to leverage, right? You see very big potential. So what the team did, and this was a global team, we formulated basically 3 scenarios that you also see on the slide. The first scenario is basically where we created one central ECHO team and completely, let's say, run the integrated transportation management process inside ECHO with a new team. Second scenario was that this new integrated process was then handled by a neutral 4PL party, so a complete outsource scenario. And the third scenario, which you also recognize here, which is obviously a red frame, which we took, is a scenario in which we work together on a hybrid network management basis with a neutral 4PL party. So this is what we selected at the end, but you need to create these scenarios later, obviously, or before you start that journey, to tell your management what are the different cost and benefit implication. And again, we went through a partner selection process, what you see in the middle, a full-blown RFQ, an extensive selection. We also invited back then so-called lead logistics service providers, for example, DHL and Kühne, I think names that some of you know. And but for us, it was always important that we really have someone neutrally in place that is handling and optimizing our network. And we always saw, let's say, a conflict of targets in that setup with lead logistics service providers. So the important was in the selection process to get all the global supply chain organization behind us in terms of decision making, and to create a clear business case in regards to total expected value. So not only the costs are relevant, also what kind of value can be created by the system and by the process that you implement. And there are also significant differences that we saw on the market. So last but not least, to make this, let's say, this long story short, we decided to go forward on a global basis with 4Flow and Alta Transportation Management System. And there are very good reasons to do that. So what we saw in the business case is a rapid, and also finally in the execution, is a rapid implementation of 18 months. So we were even able to get break even in less than 12 months. And I will show you in a minute what was the special thing that we did there. We have, with that solution, a high flexibility of planning activities and resources. So there is a certain scalability in the cost model included. We have more or less limited, if not to say no, IT investment cost necessary. We are operating a software as a service solution there. And we were able to agree on target definition and budget responsibility to have the necessary blood pressure in the collaboration.
Okay, now hybrid is the new word and the new magic, I would say. So I can imagine, now it's very hot to go hybrid. Can you explain how the rollout looked like globally?
Yeah, so finally, what we really accomplished, you see here really in facts and figures, is we implemented the system in 34 sites on a global basis, fully connected. And it basically means here on the right side, you see the global rollout. We started in EMEA in Europe. We completed this already in Q2 2015, went then to Asia Pacific, to our Chinese organization, implemented this then in Q2 2017, and then followed by North America and South America. So fully implemented solution on one premise, which I would say unique. So everyone really works on one system. We have globally integrated 150 carriers and around 200 million spent. And again, 3,000 supplier locations, 5,000 dealer locations for outbound deliveries. And on a monthly basis, we are handling around 30,000 transport orders.
I imagine, you started out in 2015 to implement it, and now we are living in 2021. So can you say something how the application have evolved and how things have changed in the meantime, apart from the implementation itself?
Yeah. Maybe can you switch to the next slide? That would help me.
So.
Yeah, thank you. So what was important basically for our journey is, and what was very specific to the implementation is, you need to basically understand how to run the change, right? So you need to understand your organization and what potential conflicts could occur. So I think everyone has their own organization out there. We have a Mart organization, which basically had certain conflicts in between manufacturing and global materials management. So if you understand that and set up the right, let's say, project organization and sponsor for the project, then this is helping you for the success of the project on a global basis. So this is what we did. We early informed, let's say, the people that are relevant. So stakeholder identification is key and of the essence in order to bring the right information to the right hands at the right time. And what was very important, I mentioned that we reached break even already after 12 months. See this here in point 2, an initial network optimization. So we were not simply implementing the network as it was. We basically had teams for 6 months working locally in the manufacturing plants to already optimize the existing network and to, let's say, get the quick wins before we then implemented basically the already pre-optimized network. So with that, we were leveraging the savings and finance the project, and therefore we're able also to get a 12 months break even. While we were doing all this optimization work, the teams in the plants collected necessary information and also provided this and supported the process and IT setup, which is here mentioned under point 3.
But I imagine, it already was a cloud solution to start with, so that hasn't changed over the time. So you were already implementing the similar kind of application at the start.
Correct.
Okay, now, that's good to know because things are changing in the software world quite rapidly. This sounds very smooth, but how do you make sure that you don't have any bottlenecks along the way?
Yeah, so of course you are facing, let's say, potential roadblocks, and as you can imagine, looking back at our journey, we had different processes, different requirements, different carriers, and that this basically to harmonize and standardize was a big task for everyone. So what is important is, as I said earlier, and broad internal communication to get really the necessary stakeholders on board, because you are influencing now processes that have happened in other areas and other responsibilities, and you basically need to explain this with good reasons, good facts, and I think we identified the right stakeholders to influence them, and as I said, in case of conflicts, it would be necessary to have the sponsor and the company defined. What is also very important is to have a good approach with the carriers. So what I can also mention here is over time, looking back the last years, we increased really the numbers of carriers, right? So we're coming from I would say, handful of carriers per factory into nowadays we are handling 70 carriers only in the inbound network. So with that system, basically, you are able to handle more complexity, and this is also a very big benefit of the system. So a timely definition and alignment and contracting with the carriers is also necessary because everything is new. Obviously, the process is new. The parties that the carriers need to work with are new, and therefore I think this is necessary to really time this to bring them on board, and after all also to contract this, because there are very specific rules in the process that everyone needs to respect, and obviously you need to make sure in the contract that this is something for long-term accessible, obviously. Yeah. So then you have the supply base. As I mentioned, we had more than 6,000 suppliers on a global basis that obviously needed to be onboarded. We have here worked out a 2 supplier information letter approach, which was working very fine and smoothly. And very important is obviously the trainings that you conduct with the suppliers, with the help of webinars and record trainings. This was very effectively done and can be also used sustainably going forward if you have new suppliers that you take this training approach in the future. Yeah, and the local plans, frequent visits, gaining trust into the new process on a continuous basis, having dedicated people also from the transportation management system working with the local plant teams on a weekly basis, having meetings with the teams. That is all important, again, not only for the implementation, also for the ongoing operations.
So I can imagine that's part of the change management that you assess the readiness to change and implement at the sites.
Exactly. So again, I'm not saying that all went completely smooth. Again, we are talking about different cultures and different expectations. So we had a lot of let's say difficult meetings, but again, after all, I think this was a very big success for the company, for the corporation as such. But yeah.
So what were the end results of all this?
Yeah, in a nutshell, big transportation cost savings. So we can really see here on the left side or on the middle center, 20% transportation cost reduction with different levers that led to that overall reduction. And you see them here listed. And overall, we also see with that visibility that we created now in the system, that we are having a better network performance, mainly a better on-time delivery KPI, which increased by 25%. And by this, I mentioned this already, we are able with this, let's say, transparency and reliability that we can now measure with our own data, we were able to reduce the days on by 24% roughly.
That's well, big, even in inventory matter. And moving along, so how do you keep on optimizing and improving?
Yeah, so I think Michael already mentioned that you have different stages. So one is the network structure, which is more long-term topic. So understanding where to put hubs into the network. But overall, I think the message is that a transportation management system is really kind of an elephant that with data that you create and that gives you all more resilience. So, for example, if you have a different network level with a different production program at one point in time, and you, as I mentioned, the volatility from the demand side leads in the next year to, or even in the next quarter, to a different production program. You need these different alternatives in the transportation modes that are basically pre-set up and pre-accessible. And this is a certain resilience that is really helping us to get a better service level for the factories.
Okay, makes sense. Maybe you can explain. So how do you manage the Acco and ForFlow partnerships, because that's different. So what's the hybrid the form of this?
Yeah. So in general, we are organized in, I would say, in 3 different teams on a global basis. So we have transportation management team, which is the decision-making team, which is leading the contractual negotiation, which is also doing the supplier selection at the end of the day as an escalation point. So this is the transportation management team. And we have then the transportation planning team, which is a team that is focusing completely of generating savings, of optimizing certain processes together with the material teams in the plants. And then last but not least, we have the so-called execution service teams that are focusing really on the day-to-day operations, but not only on the day-to-day operation, they also at the end of the day are responsible for basically improving certain performance issues with certain providers. Therefore, also they are needed. This team is needed for reporting purposes and for running improvement cycles with service providers. And as you can see on the slide, this is a little bit differently organized at ECHO. So we have North America and South America that are completely having all these three teams on ECHO side. So they basically did not decide to go for 4PL approach. So they are using the same system, the same processes, again, on a global basis, but the teams are completely ECHO internal teams. Whereas we in Europe, Middle East, and then Asia Pacific, we outsource the transportation planning and the execution services to 4Flow management. So this is basically a big difference between the regions, but nevertheless, we are working on one system with the same processes.
So why did you outsource the technical transportation planning to 4Flow and the execution part of it in Europe?
Basically, I think there are two good reasons. One is that 4Flow has already the advantage of being in the market and being focused on providing services in this area. So this is really their core competence, what they offer to us, and we were basically weighing between really getting our own learning curve or accessing, let's say, the 4PL learning curve, and the company decided back then to basically use the services.
Yeah. And I can also imagine that, what I see in the market, that European markets are a bit more complex than the North American markets. So that might be also something, you have more expertise needed in Europe, especially.
Yeah, that's also, and another good reason is also, as I mentioned, the flexibility. So we are paying this completely as a service. So therefore, if production programs basically up and down, the cost level basically for ECHO is then also moving, and this is obviously then also in effect that you cannot really demonstrate nicely if you have the people really on board on your own payroll.
Okay, so what are the next steps for getting ahead in transport management?
So the latest innovation that we currently working on, and you see here RPA, which potentially is something that most of you know, is something that we connect now with the transportation management system. So when it comes to revenue recognition, this is a very important part, especially for stock listed companies like us. So we need to really prove, for example, the handover of our goods towards the first carrier, for example, because this handover is enabling us to trigger our invoicing towards our final customers. And this is was back then pretty much a process where you have a paper basically that is signed in Germany, mostly a CMR for cross-country deliveries. The CMR was then, handled in some piles of papers. So we have digitalized all of that. So we have now a bot basically using optical character recognition to connect basically the revenue recognition paper with the TMS. The bot is uploading the paper in the transportation management system, and is then also transferring this to an Amazon cloud, where our SAP system is accessing the Amazon cloud and is able to automatically invoice towards the final customer. So this is a complete nice automation which enables you with something that is only possible because you have digitalized your transportation management system. Otherwise, you couldn't think about that. Yeah? Another nice example is that what we currently do, and I think you mentioned the name already at the beginning of the presentation, is Shipio. So Shipio is a partner that we currently implement on the transportation management platform, which will process with real-time track and trace data.
It's interesting to see that this end-to-end transport management platform enables you not only to look at the physical but also the financial flows and with the revenue recognition as part of it.
Yeah. This was a big question from our finance organization. How can we digitalize this? How can we be better for example, in our audit rates? So obviously, for stock listed companies, you have every quarter spot checks from internal, external audits, and again, if you have this spread out this process and not standardized, harmonized, and not digitalized. This is obviously it's good failure rate. But if you digitalize that and really follow up and find potential failures in the process upfront and design the process accordingly, then this is leaving less room for failures.
I can imagine that you get a lot of support from the C-level because of this, that you're not only in logistics, transportation, but also you're getting into the financial area. So that's lifting also the C-level support, isn't it?
Yeah, I see CFO is very happy. So we have a smiling face in front of us. So very good, everything well.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for your explanation. And there are some more questions. We will take them later on in the Q&A. Yeah. But Mike, I can imagine, hearing this, that you need a real end-to-end TMS approach. So could you explain how that looks like and what is needed for that?
Sure. So over the last 20 years, I would say our experience condensed into one picture. So what we really see as key success factors to implement a TMS, end-to-end TMS, as just explained on this slide. So we see that it is really driven by the supply chain strategy. So it's not only about TMS. You need to get it more holistically. So really supply chain view on it, and of course that it should be the core driver. So and around this, if you look to the TMS approach, then you should think about what is the right organization for you. As very nicely explained from Michael, that can be in-house, that can be outsourced, but also hybrid. So that's really the main questions you should ask yourself and come to a conclusion. Of course, you need to design the processes for this organization, typically global template processes and regionalized potentially for different regions. Of course, you should select the right system. We have a suggestion, by the way, which one is the right one. And of course, you need to have a look into your as-is data. So data availability is quite essential, because the better your data, the better you can automate and the better you can optimize. So I think that's quite essential. But what is also something we learned and saw over time is that the TMS plays a quite nice role in order to be a consolidation layer over different ERP systems. So we have very often the situation that the ERP landscape of our customers is very fragmented, and we are then basically playing a layer to give global visibility, even though the ERP systems are different. And of course, in order to really create the best performing transport network, you need to design it, as explained, with an approach of a network design, but also design your network also for the future. And with that integrated approach, you of course also are much faster in replanning and acting on changes in the market. So that's essential to also react very fast on changing market conditions. So that's, I would say, the core essence of it. And of course, how you want to collaborate with your plants, with your carriers, with your suppliers and your customers. And as you know, we are software as a service, and we are believers that technology and the onboarded carriers and the onboarded suppliers are, of course, a key enabler to really have a best of breed end-to-end TMS. And just to finalize, maybe the essence of it, of course, everything you do and you decide typically is driven by the business case, as really perfectly done by Echo, because they really, by the approach and by the TMS, they could leverage already during the project the first savings by optimizing their network, not just implementing as is. At first, have a look into the network, implement the optimized network already. That delivers very fast, very nice savings.
I have a question from the audience about that. Most of the times you already have contracts with carriers or 3PL companies. How do you handle that? Is that hindering you with your network redesign?
Let's say, of course, if you have long-lasting frame contracts, that's not easy to get out there. But at the end, of course, that's part of your overall, I would say, setting of the transport network. So without a TMS, you have quite long contract periods because it's hell of a work to source. With a TMS, you're getting more dynamic because this tendering process is much easier. If you have digitized your freight tender, it's a few clicks and then you can go for it. So with that, you really create that dynamic in the network and you can act faster.
All right. So wrapping up, we are almost to the Q&A. So what are your conclusions hearing all this Echo explained?
Yeah, basically, so what this example really nicely presents is that this collaborative platform we call end-to-end transportation management system is the enabler to create visibility, and this resulted in 20% freight cost reductions while increasing the network performance. So that's really gathering that overall supply chain aspect again. So that's the nice results we saw here, and it's not over. So the story, as Michael explained, will be proceeded, and we really expect by using the next level of innovation, we will release more savings and keep Echo at the stage where they are, so competitive advantage compared to their market competitors.
Right, Mike. Thank you for your conclusions. We're getting to the Q&A. Before some questions I will be asking, there will be 30 minutes afterwards when we go into the lounge, so you can also talk to Mike, Michael, Carolyn, and myself directly in a kind of Zoom meeting. So after this, we have 30 minutes if you want to take it away deeper. Question, from my side, Michael. So what do you expect from real-time visibility? And are you also looking at, external data like the weather and traffic to have a better improvement of your transport planning? Mike, what do you expect from real-time visibility?
Question to me, Michael, or to the other Michael? Which Michael?
Michael Bülow from Echo. Yeah.
Okay. So, sorry. This is very interesting. So we are expecting specifically for long distance deliveries, let's say, to give this the right information and time, and to basically give us possibilities to react faster than today. Be it either in production rescheduling or in finding mitigation activities like rail or flying things, to have this information earlier than today. Because nowadays, get this information, it's depending on status information that we not often get in time. So this is something, looking forward to improve the process there.
Both to Mike and Michael, I was wondering, there's a lot of scarcity in transport capacity, and maybe there will be more scarcity in all kind of modalities. What do you do that? Can you reserve capacity in advance, or how do you handle it? So first, I'll pick at TMS Michael Buckley. So Mike, what do you expect? Can companies already reserve capacity when there is scarcity? How do you handle that? And how does Alpega take into account that the possible planning of scarce capacity?
Basically, what Carolyn mentioned in the beginning is one of the answers. So on the one side, you saw now what an end-to-end TMS is, but on the other side, and that's why we are heavily pushing on that end also, you saw that we are also having freight exchanges, which is basically the direct access to freight capacity. So what we think will happen in the future is that besides, of course, long-term contracts, these spot markets or freight exchanges play a more important role in the future. And what we think in regards of digitization, opening up those freight exchanges to the shippers will be an answer, at least partially, to your question.
Yeah. Michael Bülow, what do you think? Do you want to reserve capacity up front and do you want to have it in contract, or do you expect that freight exchanges will help out if there is in the next month?
So at this point in time, we are contracting all of our partners, and we are seeing that in times where the partners are not very open to contract, let's say, longer term, then this is basically based on capacity issues, which what we see, for example, on the overseas market at the moment, that no one is willing to contract really for 12 months. So there we needed to go down to six months. So this is not really helping us. And these times, our supply chains are really under fire. And again, at the moment, we are not an opportunistic company. We believe, let's say that within a 12 months period, an RFQ will show the truth of the market, and we remain normally, let's say, in that contract relationship in that period that we agree.
Okay, thanks. There's way more questions and more than I can handle, and we are already over the hour. So with this, I would like to wrap up, and I would say, there's some more reading available. We have a self-assessment for visibility you might be interested in, and there are also some great case studies available from Alpega TMS. See it here, and you'll get the direct links in the PDF you will be sent to, so you can access this. But like I said, we will be available in the next 30 minutes in the lounge. So if you have more questions, you can ask them directly, and just go to the lounge after wrapping up this. So with this, I would like to thank Carolyn. Thank you for explaining Alpega. Carolyn, thank you.
Pleasure.
And Michael Buckler from Alpega also, thank you for explaining the whole approach of end-to-end TMS. Thank you.
Many thanks.
And last but not least, Michael Bülow from ACCO, thank you for explaining the great case, impressive case of the whole supply chain improvement, and especially in the end-to-end supply chain transport management.
Thank you, Martin.
And to the listeners, thank you all for listening in. And like I said, it will be recorded and made available in 48 hours. We'll wrap up. Next week, we will be available and here again with the webinar Wednesday. But for now, I'd like to thank you, and maybe we'll see you later in a minute in the lounge if you have more questions about end-to-end transport management. So bye-bye, and see you later, and maybe I see you in the lounge.